Good morning, everybody, and welcome to Todd and Shane's Cloudy Podcast, episode 391, recorded live Wednesday, May 30th, 2018. For production notes, I'm a little behind on production, not so bad. I got 389 out yesterday, and 390 will come out today. And 390 was the one that you and I recorded last week at the SharePoint Conference. And the audio for that is bad. So for those of you that weren't there, and we had a good crowd for the first one. We tried to do 2 last week. The second one, we just could not get to work, period. But good.
So this is 399 try number 2, right? 'Cause we tried to do 391 last week, and the audio was just unwatchable, listenable to.
Yeah, like Yoda says, there is no try, there is only do or don't do, and that was very much a don't do. It just was not in the cards. But for those of you that were in the audience for the first one, you saw the problems that we had, and that resulted in some very bad audio. And I think part of it came down to the USB hub that we were using with my laptop. So I think might have been during the recording of that podcast, I went out and ordered some new ones. So now I've got a USB-C hub for my laptop, and it's got all the things. So that will hopefully help us out. But the audio is kind of snappy and poppy and all of that, and it's kind of annoying. But that will be out hopefully today. I've got it all rendered. I just need to put the stuff in there.
Yeah, I think the moral of the story is we've just outgrown the ability to do remote podcasts. It's either here at our desk or not at all.
Yeah, and I'm going to talk to Jason. So Jason Himmelstein was the guy that set all that up, the podcasting booth. And it's a great idea, and I want to keep doing it. I'm going to talk to him about how we can improve that for next time. Because I really want to do it. I like the crowd. I like the energy. I like those options. But it was not a good situation. Kind of on the tail of that, I use a thing at home called Plex, which is a media server that I use to watch movies and TV shows and music and all that over my house. And right before we went online, I got an email that said that they're now going to add podcast support. So that will be one more place for us to try to get the podcast in and get a little more exposure. So if you've got Plex, keep an eye out for that.
Yeah, well, so speaking of coming out, right, the Tesla, I finally got our podcast to show up in there. So I got to see the terrible picture of us, which is really weird shaped and doesn't work very well in the Tesla, but we have made it to the Tesla. We have arrived.
Well, now I can finally buy a Tesla. So now that they've righted that wrong. So we'll have to talk about that image because there's a couple of places where it shows up. Like it shows up squashed. So I might have to tweak that image a little bit.
Yeah, it's a problem, right? Is everyone wants a slightly different size and format, and until you get the perfect universal one, yeah, some places it looks great, some places it looks ridiculous, and you just have to kind of roll with it. So,
yeah, I assumed I'd messed it up, but I like your explanation better.
I think we get a pass on this, right? If I could make it your fault, I would, but I think it's just the case of everyone wants something a little different.
Yeah. And finally, the no podcast would be complete without a note from our sponsors, the folks at SysKit. I got to hang out with them a little bit last week, and that was good. We've got some plans for 2018 moving forward. But Shane has mentioned that I'm contractually obligated to not spend 7 to 10 minutes talking about SysKit like I would do without those constraints. So thanks to them for sponsoring the podcast. And I did want to mention that on June 7th, they're going to be having a webinar with a friend of mine, Gokin. He is a SharePoint MVP. I would try to pronounce his last name, but I would mispronounce it, and I would be very embarrassed about that. So they've got a podcast on managing and monitoring and analyzing SharePoint. It is Thursday, June 7th. It is 4 p.m. Central European Time or 10 a.m. Eastern Standard Time here in the U.S. And you can sign up for that by going to toddclint.com/syskit webinar, and that will bounce you over to their page. Free webinar with my man Gokin. I might pop in. We'll see what I got going on that day. But thanks to SysKit.
There you go. All right, so then jumping right into topics.
Yeah.
I think, clearly we were at the SharePoint conference last week. We did the show that kind of talked about the announcements and all that. But I think one of the things I thought might be fun for us to kind of talk about is just the show dynamics, right? This idea that here we had a few thousand SharePointy nerds and, some related technologies running around at a conference. And I don't know, you and I, we've been to so many conferences over the years. It's like its own thing. I don't know. I struggle. I mean, in some ways it felt like a high school reunion. In some ways it feels like a family reunion. In some ways it feels like a rave party that I have no business being at. I don't know. What are your thoughts?
Yeah, well, the funny thing about that is I've been to family reunions before. I agree that it is like that. I have only had one high school reunion. My class just doesn't like each other enough to get together. So I don't know that I can compare it to a high school reunion because I've not really had any of those. I guess I go to Jill's, I go to my wife's. But yeah, it's like all my old friends, and it feels so. You and I have been hanging out with these nerds for 10 to 12 years now, for a big chunk of our adult lives. And so, yeah, it's all conversations about whose kid's doing what and what things are going on. And yeah, it's a good time, and it is just the energy of the show and the energy of getting to hang out with my friends is great and exhausting and overwhelming. But yeah, it was a good time.
Yeah, no, it is. I mean, so I've never been to my own high school reunion. I refuse to go. They have them every 5 years, and I just don't like those people. So
Yeah.
what do you do? But I've been to my wife's, but really, I mean, we've all seen Michelle and Romy and Michelle's high school reunion. I just assume that's what they're all like, right? People landing in helicopters, and, some cool, awesome music and promy dresses. So that's what I assume they're all like, and that's what the conference reminds me of. So there you go.
Yeah, I'm a little disappointed. So there were 29 kids in my graduating class, and Jill's was probably 60, I forget. Not big, but I'm disappointed because I've always wanted to go to a class reunion that I wasn't at and then just start walking around going, hey, you remember me? I sat behind you in English. Remember that time we did the thing? I just think that would be fun, but none of the ones I go to are big enough for me to be able to pull that off.
Well, so then what you can do is just look for the local, wherever they hold those type of things, and just watch their schedule and just go walk in on one night.
I think what I'm going to do is I'm going to go to one of your high school reunions. Um,
Happily, I'll send you, I'll forward you the next invite, and you can go. You can tell them you're me. See how
That's
it
what I'm going to
goes.
do. Yeah, yeah. Funny thing, a guy that I used to work with, had the same philosophy as you, didn't really want to go to his reunions, and he moved a bunch, so he never really connected with anybody. But he did make friends with one of his buddies who did go to the reunion. So after his buddy came back, he's like, "Hey, how was the reunion?" And his buddy's like, "Oh, pretty good." He's like, "A couple of people asked me where you were while you were at the union," and my buddy's like, "Oh, what'd you say?" He's like, "I told him you were in prison." And the best part was the person he told it to went, yeah, I can see that. Yeah, it was like no surprise part whatsoever. It's like prison. Yeah, we saw that coming.
It happens. So I think the other big thing to take away from these shows, though, if you've never been, right, other than Todd and I reminiscing over all the people we see, is it's the boost of energy, right? So SharePoint,
Yeah,
I don't want to say it's been kind of flat for a while, but SharePoint's been kind of flat and boring for a while. And I just felt like this conference
yeah,
just took everyone that was there and just kind of gave them this shot of SharePoint adrenaline. Everyone was kind of jazzed about, some of these new features, and just the SharePoint is still going and moving. And what's weird, right, is SharePoint is still growing and taking off is but it's gotten to be so big you don't notice that it's still growing, right? Unlike the
yeah.
old days when it was growing probably at a lesser pace, but the growth was just so dramatic over the last one. Now this dramatic stuff, we've just gotten used to it. And now, I don't know, so there's a
Yeah.
lot of energy.
Yeah, and I was talking to my son the other night. We were watching a train, and he was talking about how slow it was going. And it's the same way. I'm like, trains are so big that you can't see how fast they're moving. It's just your mind. And SharePoint's the same way. It's just so big that it's doing huge things, and you just can't tell because it's already so big. And I agree with the energy thing. Again, what was it? 4 or 5 years ago, we thought SharePoint was dead, like they were just going to kill it,
Yep.
and they didn't do that. And they brought it back, and there was some excitement, but I didn't know what to expect for this conference. I knew that it would not be up to the standards of the last, SharePoint conference. It was 12,000 people or something just massive like that. But I didn't know what to expect with this one going in. I was excited, but, very trepidatious. And it was a good time. Like there was a lot of vendors in the vendor hall, a lot of very excited people. And so you and I did a workshop on Thursday. Same old crap we've always been doing, same jokes, same slides. And there were 100 people in that room, I forget. Almost half of them have contacted me after that session. So I'm guessing 42 people that were in that session that day have contacted me and said, hey, it was great. Can we get your slides? I don't know that I have seen that level of excitement from one of our sessions, that much feedback afterwards. So yeah, I agree that the excitement is really there. They announced some amazing things that, pairing this up with the May event that they always do. There's some great announcements out there. And yeah, I'm with you. The buzz and the excitement was far greater than I expected it would be.
Yeah. Well, so speaking of being with me, I will tell you when you watch the video version, but really it's only your mom that watches anyway.
Hi, Mom.
You kind of randomly are freezing up, so the audio is never going in or out. It's just, occasionally we kind of get still motion to Todd, like So if you could do more of those type of Vogue poses and make sure you catch one of those locked up, that would be awesome.
Yeah, I will do that for you. The good news is I added out all the video so I can put a much more handsome look when that comes out.
Yeah. And so then Mark in the chat room asked, are the recordings going to be published? So Mark, nothing that Todd and I did was recorded at all. Like, so there's not even a recording unless somebody had like a tape recorder in the front row.
Yeah.
And I don't know if like the keynote, well, I mean, the keynote was streamed. So in theory they could maybe, but I would not expect a whole drop of recordings on Channel 9.
Yeah. Eric is also asking about the slide decks. I don't know where the conference is going to make those available. I don't know. For anybody that was in our sessions, they just emailed me and I sent them out, and I've got a link for all those, so I can help those out. But yeah, so it was a crazy mix of small conference but big feel and excitement. I came out of it jazzed about a bunch of stuff I didn't expect I'd be excited about. So yeah, it was a good thing, and I guess I've heard they're already doing one for next year. They've already got it planned. I don't have the official information about that, when and where, but I've heard it from enough places I believe it. So.
Yeah. Apparently they announced it, but yeah, I'm with you. We were not present for that announcement. They did not coordinate with our schedulers to make sure we knew about it.
Their people did not talk to our people and all of that. So I'm going to go out to the SharePoint NA. Oh, yeah. So they've got it on the SharePoint NA site. Who would have thought to look there? May 21st through 23rd, 2019. Same place, MGM.
Interesting.
So they're going to be there.
Hopefully the electronic dance music conference is there at the same time as well, because that was some fun people watching.
The EDM was, and then the Billboard Awards were there Sunday night. It was, it was pretty crazy.
All right. So
Vegas is always great for people watching. It upped itself a little bit this time.
Yeah, Vegas was on its A game. Well, I didn't even tell you. So who cares, right? So I left at like 5, I had to leave at like 5:45, 5:50 for the airport on Friday morning.
Right.
And so I can tell you, standing in that taxi line, I was the only person that had slept the night before. Every single other person in that line was still up partying from the last night. The guy in front of me who was really dazed and confused, he smelled like potpourri. I don't know what that was all about, but
probably better than what he smelled like immediately before he smelled like potpourri.
I don't know. I'm pretty certain that he had inhaled some potpourri about 6 seconds before I saw him, because my eyes started to get a little bloodshot from all the potpourri, so it was a little weird.
Yeah, and not only standing in the taxi line at 5 o'clock were you the only one who had slept that night, you're probably the only one in Vegas who'd gotten 8 hours of sleep the night before. Because Shane had a goal to be in bed every night by 9. That was not met every single night, but he started getting fussy about 9:02.
Good news for you, Thursday night I made my bedtime too.
Since I wasn't around to drag you out and make you have fun.
Yep.
Okay, so yeah, good times about that. It was good. Devin was in one of our sessions. Glad to hear it. A bunch of people. It was good time. I had a blast. Really excited that I got to go to that. So B used to be, these are the notes for the podcast we tried to do last week that we weren't able to do. And at one point in my chaos-infused rage, I was screaming at Shane to put more notes in the list, and he just started typing no. So I see that we've replaced B. So I plan to do a bigger splash, but...
We can wait.
Okay. So we will call this foreshadowing.
Okay. I didn't know. So I put a question mark. I wasn't
going to drop it. It's all good. So the next thing we had, and this was something that came out a week or two ago that we didn't cover when it first came out, was a blog post by the SharePoint team that they are making a versioning update to document libraries in SharePoint Online and OneDrive for Business. So again, this is all cloud. This is not on-prem, all cloud. And this comes hot on the heels of the recent storage increase that they announced. So before you got, half a terabyte for each user. Now you get 10 terabytes or something for each user. I forget how that works. 10 gigabytes, half a gigabyte and 10 gigabytes. And so kind of the reason that they did that, I think, was this next point where they increased the versioning on every document library in their online properties to a minimum of 100 major versions.
Did they buy a storage company and we just weren't paying attention?
I have no idea. So what this means is every document library you have in your Office 365 OneDrive for Business and every document library you have in every team site in SharePoint Online, uh, either does now or will, I think by the end of July, have a versioning set on, and it will have a minimum of 100 major versions. Existing libraries that have versioning enabled but don't have it set at 100, have it set at something smaller than that, will get bumped to 100. And libraries that have greater than 100 major versions now will not get changed.
That's insane, right? I guess I'd missed this announcement, and I didn't actually read anything you typed in the OneNote. So
Clearly, yeah.
but that's a really just crazy idea. I guess they're just tired of dealing with restores and things like that. So they're just like, yeah, we're just gonna turn version on, the recycle bin on, and just.
I think it is not that. I
No.
think that this is necessary for the files restore option. This is necessary for the, oh my God, we've got ransomware, quick run to the admin portal and roll us back. I think that is what this is.
So you think this was kind of already the default in like OneDrive for consumer, or aka OneDrive for pleasure, and then so now that they're kind of incorporating the same feature sets, they wanted to have the same back-end structure, and so that's why they went with this? Is that what you're thinking?
Probably something like that. I think that's kind of what it is. So in the chat room, Stacy is asking if this counts against your storage. Yes, it does. And again, I think that's why they upped the per user storage allotment here a couple of months ago, was to cover that, because they gotta have all those versions to do the rollback, and they don't want to penalize people who trying to size their storage correctly and then get this version thing thrust upon them. So yeah, that was something. And again, you mentioned you didn't see it when it came out. It came out in all the normal channels here a couple of weeks ago, but for whatever reason, it didn't make a big splash. So I guess it came out on the 15th, and I had it open in a browser. I do this terrible thing where I see something that I want to read, but don't want to give myself the time to read it at the time. So then, and then, one of 16 patches installed and rebooted. And so the first time I opened Chrome, all my tabs popped up. And so there's like 50 tabs of things I was going to read. And this is one of them. I'm like, oh my God, how did we miss this? So yeah, so that is something that you will see. So don't freak out if you go into SharePoint Online and you see 100 versions. You're like, that is there by design.
Yeah, well, this is, kind of brings us back to our Thursday all-day workshop, right? Someone asked us, how do you keep up? And because we said one of the things we kind of preach in all of our sessions all week is, even if you're an on-prem only person, you've got to learn your cadence, your way of finding out what's going on in SharePoint Online, because it's changing so fast and so rapidly. And so then he's like, well, where do I go just to get the single list of everything? And we're like, well, they do a really good job of pushing the major updates info. The minor stuff is sometimes, or the mid stuff is usually findable. But then there's a lot of things that change that, maybe somewhere there's a footnote somewhere, but you just find them when you trip over them in the UI. And so this is clearly one of the major things, right? They had a proper announcement around, but learning to keep up, if you're not already trying to do that, is pretty challenging. And I think you already have a blog post that kind of helps with some ideas around that, which is still probably not all inclusive, but at least gets people moving in the right way.
Yeah, that was a funny question. So that came up during our workshop, and somebody asked, how do you keep up? And I took a big breath, and I was getting ready to do my spiel and talk about my blog post, because I was kind of quiet. I didn't mention my blog much. And so this was a good opportunity to mention my blog. But in the process of me taking my breath and getting ready to talk, Shane started talking, which happens all the time. And it is freaking horrible. I don't know if you guys appreciate the pain I go through. Yeah. So he starts into his thing about the thing. But you raise an interesting point that there are kind of different tiers of changes. And, like you said, the big changes show up, the mid changes sometimes do, but the small changes end up being just things that are changed in KB articles, and, and then you stumble across them. And so had I taken my breath more quickly and spoken first, I would have hit the big changes really hard and not at all mentioned the small and mid changes. So that was one of the rare, maybe the only time where it's better that you spoke first. So
wow, are we recording this? Did you just say it was better that I talked?
No, I have no recollection of that.
Oh my goodness.
So the blog post that I have that I didn't think to look up, covers the big things. So it's, looking in the admin center, following a couple of web pages and all that. But the mid and the lower range stuff is tough to keep up on. Yeah,
well, that reminds me. So that monthly article I write for Petri that covers, kind of what's big news for Office 365, what's the big news for SharePoint? I got to write that today. So if you could figure out all the things I should write about and just send me some links with maybe a paragraph with each one,
Well, is that all? Yeah, is that all I need to do? So I found the link that we're talking about. It is toddclient.com/Office365 updates.
Seems like a memorable name.
Though I'm guessing that short URL is not going to work. But so yeah, and that again, like Shane said, that keeps you up with the big ones, but not so much the smaller changes. But that was a change, the versioning thing I thought that we should bring up. Another note from the session, and I got a couple of emails on this, which is why I decided to put it in the show notes, was I keep referencing this blog post that the Microsoft Enterprise Mobility, the identity team at Microsoft did after LinkedIn had been breached and all the usernames and passwords had been released. And so it talks about all the things that Microsoft does to protect Azure AD accounts and things from these leaked lists. It's a great story. I highly recommend it. But a bunch of people were asking me for that link, and so I thought I'd go back and reread it and add it to this list. So the link to all this are in the show notes, and you can go to toddclient.com/podcast 391 to get them all. But this is just that thing about how Azure AD is a thing. You got to move your identity stuff out there. And part of the reason is because Microsoft's security team, they are on it. And this blog post does a great job. And this is what they did 2 years ago. So this is from May 10th of 2016. Imagine what they're doing now. But just all the things that they do when these leaked lists come out, and how, in this case, they were already ahead of it, that they had almost nothing to gain by getting that list because they'd already caught it all.
Yeah, it's such a compelling story, and it's so hard, right? Because forever, that's how you and I, as being on-prem nerds, fought the cloud, right? Security, yeah. The cloud has zero security, and now, without a doubt, with a completely straight face, I will tell you that the cloud, Microsoft's cloud more specifically, is more secure than any on-prem environment I've ever built, designed, or managed, and it's just raw resources, right? They have more people who are in these CD chat rooms finding these leaked lists before they become leaked, and they have a much larger target vector, tens of millions of accounts, and so that's where they figure out these new attacks, like the spray attack we talked about a couple weeks ago, where they're trying to hack all the accounts at once with the same password instead of one account with all the passwords, and we could never discover that on-prem with them being super nerds out there and having so much more data to look at. They are just way ahead of anything we could do on-prem.
Yeah, so this article is a good one if you're an IT pro and you're talking to your security officers or your CTO, CIO folks and talking about moving to the cloud, and they're pushing back on things like security and identity and authentication. This is a good article to either make them read or sum up for them to read, because it does really show what Shane said, that the Microsoft security folks are just so on it. So I like that story.
Yeah, well, I think we'll skip one here. And so speaking of security, I'm sure everyone's probably heard by now. Maybe not, though, because it seems almost be like a fake news article, the way they've kind of been telling the story.
Yeah.
Apparently, hundreds and hundreds of thousands of routers have been hacked here in the United States.
Mm-hmm.
And our friends at the FBI have kindly asked if you would all just reboot your router. That would help them as they kind of start to work through this process. But I don't know. It's an interesting story. Long story short, right? And we don't really have to be short, but some evil actor who has a bear in their name, they believe, has attacked all these routers, and so they've infected them with several different, I guess viruses, for lack of a better way of putting it. And the main one, the one that can do evil, the one that'll go out and let them control it like a botnet and attack other surfaces and stuff. That one can be mitigated by just a reboot, so that will get rid of that one. But then the other viruses allow them still to compromise your device. There's still more to be done, but I don't know. I've been really overwhelmed by this all.
Yeah, and this is one of those stories that has evolved since it first came out a few days ago. And it's funny. My dad came down, and my dad, he's a retired guy, and he's not a computer guy, but he's a technical guy. And so when he sees stories like this, they interest him, but he doesn't have the depth of experience that you and I do in this particular field. So he was asking me about this router thing. And he's like, yeah, I saw this thing where they're saying everybody should reboot their routers. Like you were saying, that kind of sounds like a made up sensationalist clickbait sort of thing. He's like, is there any proof to that? And I said, well, yeah, and I kind of told him what you just said. But then the other thing I told him was, you really have nothing to lose by rebooting your router. So even if your router is not on the list, even if your router is on the list and it's not infected, you reboot your router and 30 seconds later, you're back to streaming funny cat videos. So it's not a big problem. But talking about that, a buddy of mine moved a week or so ago, and he called me yesterday, and we're trying to figure out the tech in his new house, the wiring and all that. And he was talking about the wireless. And so he moved to a bigger house, and his old wireless access point's not covering the whole house the way that he wants to. So we were talking about that. And I'm like, man, it's been a while. Like, how long ago did we get that wireless access point? I'm trying to think, life milestones, how many kids there were when I set all this up. And I'm like, man, that thing's got to be like 6 or 7 years old. And he's like, I think it's 12. So my man is running a 12-year-old wireless access point. So I'm surprised that those technologies at all, anybody's talking anything. But then I'm thinking about the security stuff, and I'm like, man, his dog can probably hack that thing. And so we need to get him a new one for no other reason than just security.
Yeah, and that's been interesting to me also, right? So I bought, the biggest, baddest, super duper Nighthawk R8000 body router, but it was probably 4 years ago, right?
Man, has it been that long?
Yeah, and I keep looking, and it seems like it is still the top of the food chain, or one of the tops of the food chain, right? Yeah. I guess it has some more competitors now, but I keep wanting a compelling reason to buy a new, bigger router that'll give me cancer instantly instead of this one that's going to take 2 or 3 years.
Yeah, nobody's got time for that.
And I just can't. I don't know. So it's kind of weird. I guess I don't feel as bad for your buddy whose router is 12 years old because I don't know. I'm sad it hasn't changed.
Yeah, so yours in 4 years is probably not. There might be some new wireless stuff, but his in 12, I'm guessing he's 802.11b.
Yeah,
something like that. So yeah, and you've got the Nighthawk or whatever, the one that looks like an upside down spider.
Yes.
Very intimidating, very aggressive look to it. I've gone a different way with my stuff. So Shane and I were talking about this before the show. I've not rebooted anything. I have a Unify Ubiquity Edge Router Lite, which is basically a little Linux appliance. So it is not like the ones that are in this particular thing. And then that is just my router. And then for my wireless access points, I have the Unify mesh wireless thing here in my house. So it's not professional grade gear, like the university here in town doesn't use anything like this, but it's a bump above the regular consumer stuff. But I should reboot mine just because I haven't rebooted it in a couple of months.
Yeah. Yeah, and I keep getting closer and closer to putting my kids on their own wireless, right? So putting a WAP, putting a wireless access point attached to my router that is also a wireless access point and running just 2 separate networks, because then I think I can then put the circle back on. I got rid of the circle. It's not in use right now because I was tired of its buffering issues it was causing, but put it on theirs and let them deal with buffering.
Yeah. I've thought about that too. Mike, our kids are roughly the same age, and they're certainly getting to the spot where my kids legitimately want to get online for doing things, and it's tougher to keep track of stuff. So I've thought about putting them on their own network, logging the crap out of it and having those logs separate so it's not dispersed with all the stuff that I do. Yeah, I'm thinking about going that route too.
Yeah, and my kids, it's just that darn YouTube, right? That's all they want to do. They want to do YouTube and Fortnite, and that's it.
Yeah, well, that's a similar story. But yeah, so the moral of the story is, if you're watching this live, wait till we're done to reboot your router. And in the chat room, Ollie's saying go ahead and reboot your fridge at the same time. That's always good advice. Reboot your microwave, your dishwasher, all those things. Get the hackers out. And then if you're listening to this, in your Tesla, by all means, keep going. But everybody else, go ahead and reboot when you're finished.
Yeah. Well, and so one of the things you might want to do is you might want to automate all those reboots, right? So I started playing with Microsoft Flow last week.
Oh yeah. Mm-hmm.
So I'm working on I'm writing and creating this Microsoft training course. It's going to be, PowerApps Canvas apps, PowerApps model-driven apps, the Common Data Service, and then Flow.
Yep.
And so last week, in between all of our sessions, instead of hanging out with your dumb butt,
Mm-hmm.
I got to sit in my hotel room, hang out by myself, and learn a whole bunch about Flow and make, record a bunch of content so I'd be ready to do it next week. Which, did I mention I won't be on the podcast next week?
No, and so the thing about that is, so Shane was whining about all this stuff last week, and every time I'd want to go do fun stuff, sit by the pool and talk about girls and all that, he would talk about how he had to go back to his room and record flow videos, and I was mostly sure he was just making it up so he didn't have to hang out with me. But now I'm starting to think that maybe that was real. Huh.
Yeah, it turns out I was actually telling you the truth for once. Not really my thing.
Yeah, and we did get to have lunch one day with the what's John's title there?
I don't know, John Levesque. He's got a weird title, but basically he's the flow evangelist. That's really his goal in life.
Yeah, so we sat down and had lunch with him, and he is just a fun guy. And if you're following him on Twitter, and I forget what his handle is on Twitter, it's like Northwest Pacific Guy or something. He is just a lot of fun. Every bit as much fun in person as he is online.
Yeah, good dude. So, I look forward, though, to the flow. I mean, I had a lot of fun playing with it, but I only had time to do the pieces I needed to do. But it's pretty nice. I hadn't explored flow as much as I'd like to before. And, one of the things I think that in hindsight now, you talked about getting the 40 emails from all of our students. I could have easily set it up so tell them all, if you put slides in the subject line, right? We'll just have Flow sit there and watch Todd's mailbox and then just pipe those emails straight to him, right? And you wouldn't even have to reply.
Yeah, and I absolutely have those exact thoughts. So I'm not a Flow guy. I haven't played with it nearly as much as Shane has. But between, having lunch with John and all the stuff that Shane was talking about for his videos and then all this repetitive process coming up, I was absolutely thinking of about 7 different situations where I'd like to figure out if Flow would work. And I will tell you, I actually went so far as to log into Flow and start poking around and trying it and failing miserably. So yeah, you and I should talk at some point because I've got some Flow ideas.
Yes. Shane will give you some free Flow training. Don't worry.
Free Flow. Yeah, I like it. That's bad. So that's one of those things, they talked about at the keynote last week a little bit. Things like Flow and PowerApps and a bunch of the other really cool things will never be on-prem. And so there are legitimate reasons to stay on-prem. Certainly Shane and I acknowledge that. But with the hybrid scenarios and things like hybrid search and the on-prem data gateway and all those kind of things, there's starting to be great ways to use these really cool online services with on-prem data. And so that's definitely something that, a year or two ago, we on-prem folks could not take advantage of. We just, looked out the window while everybody else was doing cool things. But it's one of those things that keeps marching on. So if you've looked at it before, look at it again. We might have something for you. Yeah,
no, and I think that the other interesting thing we'll talk about just for 1 second. So with Flow, right, we can have it, there has to be a trigger. That's what every Flow starts with. And so you can do it like on when your SharePoint list or your email box or things like that change. Boring. You have button flows where like you have the Flow app and you just press the big red button and boom, the Flow kicks off and does magic for you. Kind of cool. They also then have these little things called flick buttons, like a physical button that you can buy for, I don't know, $20 or something.
Yep.
And it connects via Bluetooth to your phone and then that's how it interacts. But so you can hook up that flick button to a Microsoft Flow. And so one of the Flow people I was talking to, he or she, I'm not going to give away any details here, said that now that they're in the dating pool, they're going out and doing this type of stuff. They have taken the flick button, put it on their keychain, and they've made a Flow so when they click the flick button, that they will use Skype for Business to call their cell phone. So they can be like, there's an emergency. Timmy needs me. I'll be right there. And so that is how this person, he or she, is bailing on bad dates. They're using a flick button to run a Flow to call them via Skype for Business. It was like, that's amazing and spectacular and terrible all at the same time.
I can only assume that whoever dreamt up the idea for Flow and had to take it up through management to get the the process approved and get it into incubation, all that, I'm sure that's exactly the use case scenario they were thinking about. So a tangential thing. So I've got some of these Amazon Dash buttons.
Yeah.
These use Wi-Fi instead of Bluetooth. But now I'm wondering if I could replicate that because there's some ways out there to hack these so that they don't actually order me some Fiji water from Amazon, but get me something else. But that would be cool to set that up with a Flow and have it do something. Obviously, I'm not going to be bailing on dates, and it doesn't use Bluetooth, so I couldn't use it outside my house. But I had never thought about trying to wire one of these up, so that's a good idea.
Yeah, that's and when you see the flick buttons, exactly what you'll think of is those same Amazon buttons. That's a perfect analogy because it's exactly where my brain went. I didn't know
Yep.
you drank Fiji water, though. I didn't know you were so important.
I don't. No, I drink tap water. But over a series of campaigns that Amazon has had promoting these, you could do like order the Fiji button and get it for free because they want you to buy Fiji water. So I get the Fiji button and then don't ever buy anything with it. So I've got this one and I've got Tide. But we're I forget what we're a Cheer or whatever household here. I forget what we use. But
Ooh, I'm a Procter & Gamble stock owner. I'm a Tide user.
I'm a Procter and Gamble stock owner too. Um, so, so you're saying I should be clicking this thing, just getting it for all it's worth?
Look at this red light. It's mad.
Yeah, my dishwasher's going off. My microwave, the door's probably swinging open and closed. So yeah, I think those kind of things are great. And for those of you that haven't used Flow, there is a consumer product called IFTTT, if this then that is the same thing, but Flow takes that to the next level. IFTTT is very consumer based, very friendly, very easy to use. Flow opens up a lot more possibilities. So really like it.
Yeah, I think it's a perfect delineation, right? IFTTT and Zapier, to me, are more consumer-driven. Flow is purely business-driven, right? It doesn't do all the IoT stuff and things like that. That was the first thing I always think of with IFTTT. So
Yeah.
where are we? So got a phishing email this week. Just so you guys are all aware, right? We're all a bunch of Office 365 users, so we've gotten used to getting those, Office 365 sharing emails. There's Office 365, here's your monthly invoice emails. Well,
Yes.
some evildoer has taken to making their phishing emails use those exact same visual templates, and they've been sending those out. So I don't know what bad thing happens to you if you click on the links, but fortunately they haven't figured it all out yet. So the from was like from Johnny Tacos at 12345. So it's pretty easy to know it was bad. But his email, it looked legit like a SharePoint email, sharing email. And then they even use like a short URL instead of having it go to johnnytacos.com/php. They used a little short URL in there, so I couldn't even tell where it would actually go. So kudos to them. They're really trying to be evildoers.
Yeah, that is no fun. Yeah, and I've kind of got this thing where I don't click a link in an email anymore. I just don't, because you just never know. But that does give me an opportunity. I don't know if it's come up yet or not, but I've got a blog and I put some stuff out there once in a while.
Is there a drinking game around that?
Yes, if there's not, there should be. But I put a blog post out here a couple of weeks ago about how to resolve short URLs with PowerShell. So in this thing, you could take that short URL that's in the email, run this PowerShell command, and it will tell you the actual location that it would go to without actually going there. And so that might help with some of these things.
Very fancy.
It is, isn't it? I'm very proud of that.
Yep. All right. I will do real quick. So this is a story we came out several weeks ago that we wanted to talk about, and it's never made it to the top. And really, here we probably don't have time for it, but we're gonna do it anyway. So someone published an extensive article where they ran around D.C., right, Washington D.C., with a scanner for finding fake cell phone towers.
Oh, geez.
Turns out pretty much that entire city is blanketed in a fake cell phone tower. So if you are using your cellular phone in DC, or probably any major city, if we're really being honest, it is probably going through a fake cell phone tower who's probably stealing all your information and finding out that you needed eggs and bread from the grocery store. So I don't know. It was a very disturbing article to read, right? 'Cause I always think about, like, when I go to hotels and stuff, like, I'll just use my cell phone, right? I know that the internet through that is safe and secure and just to AT&T, and now it sounds like maybe that is not safe. And the screen is frozen when you have this really intense look, so it looks like you're really interested in what I have to say, and I'm guessing you're not.
No, I'm reading the article. I really have that look on my face. No. So that's interesting because we were going to talk about this last week and then we didn't, and I didn't read the article because I think you hadn't found it yet last week. I forget. I'm curious to see how well that works and how well your phones connect to that, the fake things.
Yeah, well, I think it turns out that, our government's the one that pioneered and invented these things and been using
Of course.
them forever. And so, like, it sounded like, there's one strapped on the side of the, different embassies and stuff in D.C. And there's, 7 surrounding the White House hoping to get, a certain president and his phone that is not part of the Secret Service's protocol to connect.
Mm-hmm.
But I mean, it sounds like though these towers emulate just the same because our phones are taught just to take whatever tower is the strongest. And so if that's the one that is closest to you, your phone just jumps on it. I'm guessing they're just sniffing, they're man in middle, right? They're just grabbing your traffic, they're saving it, but sending it to the real tower. So then that way you don't even know any better. And it was interesting.
So that, yeah, and I'll have to read that. I know back in the day, and this might have changed, but back in the day, your cell phones would only connect to towers that they knew of. And that was a thing where when cell phones, and I'm dating myself here, when cell phones were just kind of rolling out, there would be the issue where, at least in Iowa, you'd have terrible coverage. There would be blank spots, and a carrier would put up a new tower, but your phone wouldn't know to use that tower until it had gone to another tower and gotten the updated list. And I forget what the name of the list was called. And so then your phone would know, hey, that tower here's one that I can talk to. So I wonder if they've abandoned that, or if this thing has somehow found a way to get around that, or that was 20 years ago.
Yeah, because you remember you used to, on my phone, my Verizon phone, I used to have to like dial like *63 or whatever, and that would update the list in my phone.
Yeah, that's exactly the thing.
So
yeah, and Eric in the chat room mentions that's the whole roaming, even though you were at home, because there was a tower there that was a home tower now, but your phone didn't know about it. And the other thing about Eric, so Eric Van Roy in the chat room, he was at the SharePoint conference last week, hooked up with him in Minneapolis, hung out with him all week. It was pretty cool. So there's a bunch of other podcast folks, listeners that showed up, but got to spend a lot of time with Eric, so that was a good time.
Yep. All right, last topic, and we'll call it a day.
Do it.
I have made you find, folks, another PowerApps video because I am way behind on videos because I've been making Flow videos last week and CDS videos this week and whatever. But I did one on how to send multiple email attachments. So I've done several videos where I've sent email attachments, I've sent emails, and then I had a customer yesterday who said, hey, I need to send multiple pictures in one email. And I'm like, I'd never thought about that. And so in the video, I kind of walked through the logic of how I tried to solve the problem, and it was a bad idea. And so then I figured out the correct way to do it. So it's a lot of fun. Even if you don't have to send multiple emails, I think there's several little just snippets of knowledge in there. And that's what I always try to do is kind of like, you can use this little piece of little nugget for other solutions, try and just piece a bunch of those nuggets together. And that's what I love about PowerApps. It's take these controls, you have a finite number of controls, but you can build an infinite number of solutions, if you connect those finite controls together. So fun little video. It's not actually live, so if you're in the chat room and you're watching it, you're going to see the uncleaned up version, but everybody listening to the podcast, they'll get the right version. So.
Yeah, and that's a lot of PowerApp stuff last week, and that was one of the things that was interesting is just learning new techniques and new tools for your PowerApps toolbox. So when you're confronted with a thing, you're like, well, I don't know how to do that, but I know how to do this piece, and if I put them together and twist it a little bit, it'll probably get me where I need to go. And I think that's one of those things that you just get by experience. You just by going into the PowerApps interface and getting your butt kicked 6 times, and that 7th time something works, and now you've got that capability.
There you go. All right, jump in the community corner. It looks like SPS Montreal is in just, 3 short days, right? Saturday,
June 2nd. Yeah, coming right up. So hopefully folks are excited about that. I know some folks are going there. I was talking to somebody yesterday that's going, and they're like, I've got some international travel coming up. And the other person's like, where are you going? He's like, Montreal. And they're like, come on. I'm like, hey, that counts. That he gets credit for that. And he's going to SPS Montreal. So that's fun. And then August 11th, SharePoint Saturday, Charlotte. Dan from the chat room. I haven't seen Dan in there, but he's there.
Dan is on a beach right now, so he's too good for us. He did not join us from the beach. What a slacker.
No dedication. Then SharePoint Saturday, New England is October 20th in Massachusetts. I unfortunately, all of those things correspond with stuff I already had going on, so I can't go to any of these events. But if you have a community event and you'd like to give us a shout, have us give you a shout out, get a hold of either one of us at Todd Clint, todd@toddclint.com, whatever. But one event that I will be at is SP TechCon in Boston, August 26th through the 29th. Shane and I will be there doing a bunch of different sessions. Shane's doing an all-day PowerApps workshop, and I assume that I will be there being his lovely assistant, PowerApping, getting him, tea and water and those kind of things, helping him stay comfortable during the workshop.
Yeah, I'm looking forward to SP TechCon Boston, right? Because it's always a good time. I mean, Stacy, who runs the show, she's just fun. She was at SharePoint Conference hanging out with us, and I just like Stacy, and so I like her show.
Yeah, it's a good time. I've never had a bad time at the SPTechCon. So you can go to sptechcon.com, sign up for that one. In Boston, great time. We will all be there.
Ali, you're dead to me. He just called it power napping instead of power apps apping.
Mm-hmm.
So, Ali,
we'll kick him out of the chat room here in a second.
Buddy.
Banned for life.
Look at us, right at 45 minutes. We did a good job. Do the outro. Say goodbye.
Thanks for listening, everybody. If you want to contact us, I'm at Todd Clint, Todd at ToddClint.com.
Shane at PowerApps 911, or go see me on YouTube. Just search for Shane Young. I'm the best and the first one out there.
All right. See you next week, everybody. No Shane, just this guy. It'll be the best podcast ever. Till next week.
Toodles.